Welcome back, everybody, to another stock review. Today's stock is Organon Company, ticker symbol OGN, which is in the pharmaceutical healthcare industry and has a current market cap of $4.15 billion. I want to give a shout out to a commenter named Sam Meme. They are the inspiration for this video and they requested that I check out OGN. So thank you, Sam Meme. And if you have any other stocks that you would like to be analyzed, please let me know. Please leave a comment down below and I'd be happy to get to them. With that, please leave a like, subscribe for more, and let's get into it. At the company's website, we see right off the bat that Organon is mainly focused on women's health. Scrolling down a little bit, we see that their portfolio encompasses 60 medicines and products across a range of areas, including reproductive health, heart disease, oncology, immunology, dermatology, allergy, and asthma. They bring these medications to over 140 markets around the world. Organon's products are broken down into three main categories. The first is women's health, which is focused on contraception, fertility, and different conditions that are unique or predominant in women. Next is their biosimilars. In case you aren't aware, biosimilars are medications that are similar or exactly the same in chemistry as other products that are out on the market. Biosimilars are what you'd consider the over-the-counter style medication, so they're typically cheaper. They don't have a brand name, but they also can't come to the market right away. These are not medications that Organon is developing and researching and testing themselves. These are proven medications that have had their license of exclusivity expire, and now they can be created by any company, and Organon creates medications that are similar to these products that just lost their exclusivity, but at a much cheaper cost. And third is their established medicines, which include areas like cardiovascular disease, respiratory conditions, dermatology, central nervous system disorders, bone health, immunology, non-opioid pain management, menopause, and many other items. So really quickly, before we move on into Organon's investor presentation, I just want to let everybody know that in case you weren't familiar, Organon was a spinoff from Merck that occurred in 2021. Merck decided that it was going to spin off its lower margin and underperforming women's health and biosimilars businesses, and that is what Organon is. Although Organon has a long and storied history, its current business position and market conditions are only a couple years old, and the company is still very young on a relative basis. What I found most interesting was how Organon broke down its different growth prospects for its three different categories. We see in its women's health, it grew approximately 10% excluding revisions made for Forex purposes. This was driven by double-digit growth in its fertility portfolio, driven by COVID-related recoveries in China and volume growth in Latin America and the United States. Their biosimilars grew at approximately 15% over the last year, and they experienced strong demand and volume growth in the United States and Canada for one of their main products, Renflexis. But Organon's established brands are where the company is struggling most. They currently only have a stable revenue, and they expect to achieve flat performance in 2023. Unfortunately, this means that if revenue is flat, inflation is eating into their revenue growth, and that is making the established brands section of this company less and less valuable from a revenue perspective over time. On this slide, I just wanted to bring attention to the graph on the right-hand side. We can see that approximately 80% of their second quarter sales were generated outside of the United States. This is a company that is not reliant on just one country or one location for its sales, and that is a double-edged sword. In some cases, it's great that they have all this diversity in their sales and in their products, but on the other hand, it can also be difficult because they are exposed to growing markets and younger, less developed economies that are much harder hit when economic recessions do occur. We can see that their largest segment is Europe and Canada at 29%. The United States is their second largest segment at 23%, and Asia Pacific and Japan is their third largest segment at 16%, with China and Latin America not far behind at 15% each. So that is all I have for Organon's website. Unfortunately, there isn't a ton of news about this company out. It is still very young. Like I said, it's a company that was spun off in 2021. So let's get into their financial numbers and let's see if this is a worthy investment. We do see a sharp decline in company revenues, but it has started to stabilize in the last year or two, and hopefully Organon can turn that around, but there's certainly no sign of a potential turnaround yet. EBITDA is a much uglier picture. Not only is it continuing to fall, but it is also falling at a more rapid pace. Operating earnings per share also continue to fall at a rapid pace. Organon's gross margin has fallen over time, but it has stayed a lot more stable, and it's currently in the mid to low 60s. Operating margins, on the other hand, have continued to fall. It's currently sitting at 24% over the trailing 12 months versus almost 50% just 4 years ago. The company's return on assets has also continued to decline over the last several years. Even following the spinoff, Organon's return on assets was 12.5%, whereas today it is just under 7%. Annual shares outstanding have been relatively unchanged, but we can see that the company is starting to dilute shareholders. Organon did have a decent amount of cash and short-term investments on hand, but they have started using those reserves. It'll be interesting to see over time just how that reserve fluctuates and whether they can keep their cash on hand relatively stable or if it is going to continue to dry up over time. Organon has been paying down its long-term debt, but this is a very worrisome amount of debt. In fact, its long-term debt is greater than the total amount of capital that the company controls. It is a problem that they will need to work through over the next several years. As you can see, Organon's interest expenses have continued to get more and more expensive, and the current interest expense now exceeds the total cash and short-term investments that the company has on hand currently. What's worse is that Organon's free cash flow is evaporating. 2021 was a good year, but 2022 saw a major drop-off in free cash flow, and that has continued to get worse over the trailing 12 months to the point that the company is almost nearly not free cash flow positive. The drop-off looks less bad from a free cash flow per share perspective, but it is still very worrisome. But even with their long-term debt and cash flow woes, Organon does still pay a dividend. They've held it steady at $1.12 over the last approximately 2 years, but they did double the dividend in 2022 from its original payout in 2021. The company's payout ratio has continued to increase, but it is still sitting at under 40%, which is pretty safe for the time being. Moving over to the value chart, immediately you can see that Organon appears to be a very good value right now. But I do want to draw your attention to the company's projected 5-year compound annual growth rate, which is currently sitting at -5% per year. This company's low PE is a reflection on Wall Street's expectations that it's going to continue to make less and less money over time. Typically, a rule of thumb that I like to follow is that if a company is not growing at all, we should assign it a fair value PE of 10. When we do that, Organon still looks like a decent deal, but it certainly looks far less appealing. And again, that is assuming that Organon doesn't grow, but in fact, it's shrinking, which is even worse. So for a shrinking company, I want an even lower PE, so I might change this to a 7 just to see how it looks now. And this is where we see that, again, the company looks like it's in a slight fair value, but the margin of safety has completely disappeared in this case. According to my calculations, Organon right now is currently worth $20.65. The current stock price is at $17.36, but again, this is a shrinking company, so I need to see a much greater margin of safety if I'm going to be interested in investing in. So in my final thoughts on Organon, what I like about the company is that women's health is a timeless business model. Women will always have certain medical needs that are unique to them and that will never go away from a biological perspective. And so Organon is well positioned to continue to thrive in this part of their industry. There's also very little competition in the medical industry for having a specifically women-centric business. And so because the company focuses so heavily on women's health, I think that it can eventually start to build a brand trust, brand recognition, and a brand expertise in women's health that is matched by very few companies. That certainly hasn't happened yet. Organon, like I said, is only a couple years old. It takes far longer than 2 years to create that sort of brand presence, but I think it's a strong possibility for the company in the future. But given what I said that I like about the company, there's certainly much more not to like. Most of the financial metrics are ugly. The company continues to shrink its earnings, continues to shrink its return on assets, its margins continue to disappear. So I worry that the company is just in a really difficult financial position that is not going to turn around quickly, and it's certainly not going to turn around anytime soon. Organon has also yet to prove that it can grow consistently. There are expectations for revenue growth in the near future, but that needs to be shown over more than 1 or 2 quarters, more than 1 or 2 years before I'm going to start believing that Organon has figured out how to right the ship and continue to be a profitable and, let's face it, solvent company. Which leads me into my final thing that I don't like, which is the company's debt picture. Their debt-to-capital ratio is over 100%, which is excessive. Their net interest expense continues to get more and more negative, which means the company owes more and more on their debt. Even though they are paying down their long-term debt, they do have to take out more debt at higher interest rates in order to continue to survive as a company. I think this is a debt picture that is not going to be resolved anytime soon. It's going to take at least the better part of a decade, in my opinion, for them to work through this debt problem. And until that happens, I'm really not super interested in investing in the company because a lot can go wrong when you have high and very difficult to manage debt. So I think I might have just given away my final decision there. For me personally, Organon is not a company that I'm going to invest in. It's not a company that I even want to keep on a watch list, at least for the time being, because everything is currently negative for the company. Their financial metrics look awful, and with a possible recession on the horizon or with any sort of economic uncertainty, especially related to interest rates, I think that Organon is going to struggle, even if its business model is largely predicated on products that are centered around women and that tend to have a stable demand picture. What I will say is that if you choose to invest in this company, you may see quite a bit of drawdown, but you're also buying it at such a low price to earnings that if the company does manage to turn around faster than I expect it to, you could be in for some major gains. This is a high risk, high reward play if you do invest in Organon today, but ultimately that is your decision and not mine. So with that, I want to thank you for watching this video, and I just want to ask one more time if you could please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks everybody. I hope you have a great day. Bye.